Internet. My name's Em, and I'm going to be talking about some labor equality today. All right, and if you'll just look down here real quick, we've got a quick little disclaimer because I am a student and employee at my local university, so it's really important that we know that what I say here, I'm not speaking for the school. All right, with that out of the way, let's get started. I'm sure that everyone at this point has heard about quiet quitting, so I kind of looked more into that, and I've decided to focus more on the phrase acting your wage. Yeah. So it sounds bad when you say quiet quitting, but these two are essentially the same concept. So acting your wage is just setting boundaries in the workplace, doing what you're paid to do, leaving when your shift's over, not showing up extra crazy early, not taking meetings outside of your agreed upon work hours, and not taking on a bunch of additional projects that you are not getting paid for. And this sounds normal. This sounds like you just go to your job, you do your job, and then you go home. But apparently, this is like a big deal now. You're not supposed to just go and do your job and nothing else. So why? A lot of people are wondering why. Why do corporations really hate this? So I did a lot of research. Okay, so first of all, why should companies care about how much they pay their employees for their work? I think that's a pretty big thing we need to get out of the way pretty quickly. So the average salary in the United States is about $69,000 a year. Pretty good, about $16.54 an hour. If you'll notice, minimum wage is really far below that. Here's federal minimum wage right here. I think that's less than this. Correct me if I'm wrong. But anyways, in 2021, did you know that 63% of people who quit that year cited the low wages? That sucks. That's a pretty big percentage. You'd think people would quit because they had better opportunities or, didn't like the place that they worked. But a lot of it is how little they were paid. 37% said it was a major reason, more than just a little thing. It was a big part of it. And that seems a little crazy. You think these big corporations would be paying people what they deserve, but people don't feel like they're getting paid properly. In my research, I found that satisfaction with your job and what you do with it comes with how you value your work. So if you're getting paid $100,000 a year and the work you do, you value at $100,000, you're going to be pretty happy. But if your work you value at $100,000 and you're making $70,000, you're not going to be as happy. So when we think about it like that, low wages are a really big issue in this country, in the United States of America. And look at the research. 24% of low-income adults quit their jobs in 2021. 24%. When we look at that compared to other income levels, like high income or median income people, that's a lot higher, which is just another proof that paying employees too little leads to a pretty high turnover rate. And that's pretty bad for companies. Companies don't like going through the hiring process over and over and over again. So who exactly is this affecting? If you know anything about me, I'm a big fan of social justice, and I'm a big fan of equality. That's just what a lot of this is about. So let's look into it. Demographics, our favorite thing in the whole wide world. So, looking at race first. Race is a really big thing. It's a pretty clear-cut line. People self-report their race. Get some data. I love data. Data's fantastic. So we looked. And the average salary for Black and Hispanic Americans is a lot lower than the livable salary on average in the United States. That's bad. That's pretty bad. And I also looked more into it because, we got a lot of education inequality. College and universities and stuff in the United States, very expensive. And people with less education tend to make less money. But in order to get that higher education, you need money. So it's a self-perpetuating cycle. That's another thing that's really important to look at here when we look at wages and being able to live and thrive. And of course, the classic, women make less money than men. We know this, the stats back it up, it sucks. Moving on. The most egregious of all of these, notice how I'm rubbing my hands together like I'm a little evil genius? It's because I did research and I feel powerful. People with disabilities. Have you ever heard of something called subminimum wage? That means that legally in the United States, and varies a little bit from state to state, but on the federal level, this is the rule, we can legally pay people who have disabilities below minimum wage for their work. I found some sources on the federal government's website that it can even be below $2.50 an hour. That's not a lot of money. And considering that disability in the United States, the money you get for your disability to be able to live is not a lot, and actually prevents a lot of people from getting married. We need money to live. So how are people going to get this money? These are the big questions. Now it's time to get the big answers. Why don't companies want to pay people the correct wages? All right, so I take a lot of business classes, so I'm going to be kind of deriving some knowledge from that in here. So I'm just going to pull up real quick, income statement. So if we look at this, we see that in expenses, we've got salaries. So that's the salaries that they're paying to different people. An income statement is basically just saying where the money in the company is going, so don't worry too much about most of what's on this list. It's just what they're spending their money on. But notice that salaries, expense, bad. At the bottom of that income statement, we have net margin. So that's how much money is left over after they, pay off all their expenses. And the goal of most managers is to increase the net margin. They want to make more money. It can also be called net income. So I will most likely be calling it that from here on out because net margin sounds a little weird, I'm not going to lie. So how do they increase that net income? They've got two options here. They can raise the sales or regular income that they're making from the production of whatever they do in their business, or they can lower expenses. Really just take those expenses and bring it down. And if we look at all of this, rent, water and electricity, insurance, fuel, a lot of this is stuff you can't really downsize too much. But you know what you can keep low is salaries. And if people are doing the work that you need to be done, and they're doing it for lower wages than you really should be giving it to them, but they're accepting those low wages, where's the incentive to increase them? If we look at it purely on this spreadsheet, where is the incentive for a manager to pay their employees more if the employees accept the low wages and continue doing the work they need? There is none. It's looking great for them. Their investors are happy. Their bosses are happy. Why would they offer to pay people more adequately for the work that they do? But when you say it out loud like that, it sounds awful. Oh yeah, I'll just exploit you a little bit. It's fine because my manager's happy. No. That's where we get into business ethics. Properly compensating people is ethical, but it's really hard to justify it when you look at it from a spreadsheet's perspective. So a bigger goal of corporations, in my humble opinion, should be to pay employees more. However, I don't trust them to do that, and I don't think anyone else should either. So, the government. What can the government do to help fix this problem? And I think we all know where I'm going with this now. Raising the minimum wage. My favorite thing in the whole wide world. As we all know, the minimum wage was set a very, very, very long time ago in the grand scheme of things. well, not like forever ago, but like it hasn't really gone up very much. We've all seen the facts and figures of it should be at least 15, no, it should be at least $25 an hour. The point is, federal minimum wage is below $8 an hour right now. And nowhere in the United States can you live off of that amount. So why should we increase the minimum wage? So A, increases job satisfaction. As I mentioned earlier, when you're paid more adequately for your work, you're more satisfied with the work that you do. So boom, increase that satisfaction. That's really good. And another thing, when people make more money, they're gonna spend more money. It is fantastic for demand in the economy for people to spend more money. And when you increase demand, you increase sales, and people make more money in the corporations. And then they can pay people more, and they can make up for that. It is so good. It chef's kiss all around. And then employees, if they're getting paid more, they're probably gonna be more willing to do more work. If they feel like they're getting paid adequately for it, heck yeah, they'll do more. Minimum wage employees, if we raise that minimum wage, they will act their wage. So if a McDonald's worker who's getting paid $8 an hour doesn't want to work very much, I don't know, I'm going to cite my brother for this. He doesn't make a ton. He actually quit his job recently. He didn't want to work very much. When he was there, he didn't put in a ton of effort. He really didn't like the job because it wasn't worth it for the amount he was getting paid. He was getting paid 10 an hour. That's still way above minimum wage. But if we were to raise minimum wage to 15 an hour, I think people would be much more willing to do more work. For myself, I would be so much more willing to put in more effort if I got paid more with whatever job. Like, especially when I worked at McDonald's, I would have, if I got 15 an hour, are you kidding me? I would have been putting forth so much effort. And that's also good for the business. Crazy. But then there's the downsides, because there's nothing that's ever going to be perfect about any solution. So going back to our little spreadsheet earlier, our beautiful little income statement, it's going to increase our costs. Raising minimum wage is going to increase the costs to a business. That's just how it has to be. It's unfortunate for the business, but for the rest of us, it sounds pretty great. But that means that their net income also drops. And when their net income drops, the investors aren't as happy. So the managers have to cut costs again if their sales don't keep up. And they're probably going to try cutting costs anyway. Managers love cutting costs. It's like their favorite thing in the world. And one way that might happen is to decrease the amount of people that are employed. So if we were to raise minimum wage, there's a good chance we would also see a rise in unemployment in the country. There's obviously no real way to tell if that would 100% happen, but it is a possibility, and ignoring that would be unethical in this conversation. Another thing that I found in my research is some people believe that by raising minimum wage, people may be less willing to hire low experienced workers. Because if you're going to hire someone and pay them $15 an hour, but they've never done the work before, why would you do that when you could just hire someone for $20 an hour who knows exactly what they're doing or is better at the job? So that could also affect unemployment and could also affect people who couldn't go to school. Another really big thing that could disproportionately affect people of color in this country. But obviously, we don't know for sure if any of that would happen. We don't know for sure if the positives would happen, as much as I'm hyping them up. None of this is for certain. And then another downside, the final one on my list, thank goodness, is price increases. So there's a solid chance that by increasing wages, increasing those expenses, in order to increase sales revenue, companies would just increase their prices. But you also have to remember that consumers are now going to have more buying power. This is just what happens when your income goes up, you have more money, money gives you power to buy things. So you could probably keep up with those inflated prices. We don't really know 100% for sure. That's a really big thing in conversations like this. You never know for certain what's actually going to happen. But it's important to acknowledge that good things can happen, bad things can happen. We really don't know. And on to my thoughts and opinions. I don't have any research for this, it's just what I think. I think we should be raising minimum wage. I'm not sure if that surprises anyone, but I really think we should be. I think it's immoral to be paying people as little as we do, especially when people can't live off of that. The original minimum wage was made to be a living wage. People should be able to live off of it. It's not just 16-year-olds or 15-year-olds flipping burgers that are making minimum wage. It is adults. It's people who couldn't afford to go to school. It's Americans making this. Do we really want other people in our country to make below what they can live off of? I don't. I'm not sure if other people do. But I am, still fairly young, so I don't know the full consequences. But looking at it from the data and the statistics and just the moral and ethical knowledge I hold as a person, raising the minimum wage feels like it would be worth it. I want to be paid adequately for my work. I do good work. I do hard work. I should be paid properly for that. Looking at jobs and internships that are going to be paying less than $20 an hour and looking at rent expenses makes it really, really hard to find a job that's actually going to be worth it for me to go into work every day. So yeah, I think raising the minimum wage would be really good. And until then, keep acting your wage. Because if we don't, they're just going to keep exploiting the workers. We have to give them a reason to actually want to raise it. Act your wage, quiet quit, whatever term you want to use, do it. Be your own person if you're able to. And, that's that. Thank you so much for watching the video today. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. I really like doing stuff like this. I'm going to be doing a lot of it this semester for one of my courses, and I might continue this afterwards because, I'm having a good time with it. So, yeah. Have a good day. Go out there, act your wage, and be a good citizen. Adios.